Hi everyone, Doug Adams here from Run DNA, and I want to show you how you can find the perfect pair of shoes for you by using gait analysis. Now, gait analysis is a term where we're really looking at full body mechanics. A lot of times people will say that they do gait analysis where they watch you walk or run on a treadmill, and most often are just looking at what your feet are doing, but there's a lot more going on with that. We want to show you how you can really find the keys to picking out the right shoes based on how your mechanics look and some really cool metrics. So what we've got here, you see I've got a couple pairs of shoes lined up. I've got the shoes on right now that I typically run in, and what I'm looking to do is add a pair of shoes to do some speed workout in and maybe even race a 5K or two. So I've lined up a couple different pairs of shoes. I'm wearing the Topo Flylights right now. I've got a pair of the Nike Zoom X Street Flies to try, specifically designed for 5K type distances. And then I've got the Saucony Endorphin Pro 2. So I'm going to try all three out and really compare and see which one works for me. So let's get started here. This only takes a few minutes. So I'll show you, I've got some of the markers already on, but I'm going to do an analysis here and just show you how quick and easy this really is to find out really what your form and technique looks like. So I just did a patient calibration there where I made a 3D model, and now I'm going to bring the treadmill up to speed. I'm just going to put it at like an easy run pace while I get the computer ready to go here. And there's a start in 5 seconds. So I'm going to hop on here, and then it's going to start here shortly. And I'm just going to run normally. I've already warmed up a little bit, so my mechanics should be about smooth here. And I'm just going to look at and compare this one. Good. Okay, I'm going to carefully step to the side. So that's at an easy run pace. And I'm just going to save this capture for now. I'm going to name it by the shoe, Topo, and we're going to say 7.5. Okay. And then I'm going to up the treadmill just a little faster, capture and compare. So again, I'm going to do the start in 5 seconds, hop on here, get to pace, and now it should record me again here. Good. All right, so now we've got 2 recordings with the Topo, so I'm going to save this one here. And we're going to call that Topo 9 miles an hour. Okay, and we'll save that. And now I'm going to pause the treadmill for a second. I'm going to just switch out the shoes. Okay. We're going to do a new capture. We're going to do another patient calibration just because I moved some of the shoes, some of the markers. So then I'm going to stand feet together, arms across my chest. We're now calibrated, and I'm going to unpause the treadmill just to bring it up to that 7.5 miles an hour so we compare at the easy run pace and at more of like a tempo pace there. I'm going to start in 5 seconds. So I'll hop on the treadmill. Need about 10 seconds of data there. Now I'm going to bring this up to 9.0. Okay. Save this capture. Okay. And we'll do another capture here. Okay. Good. Now I'll pause the treadmill as Nike 9 7.0 miles per hour. Good. And then we'll switch out the shoes again. All right, so I've got the last pair of shoes on now. Again, move some of the markers. So I'm just going to do a new calibration to make sure everything's set up where it should be. And we're good there. Okay. And then get this treadmill started again. We'll do 7.5 miles per hour first. Turn the treadmill up to speed. Now, of course, while you're doing this, you should be asking the runner how it feels, what they notice different shoe to shoe. So we're going to say Saucony, 7.5 miles per hour. So we know which ones we're comparing to. And then we're going to do the 9 miles an hour. Good, we'll slow the treadmill down. And now we're all done. So let's bring up the shoes and now see if we can compare and look at some of the different metrics here to see which ones look better. So let's save this one. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back to the topo. I'm going to look and open this up. I'm just going to look at some of my metrics here. All right. So we'll just watch a little bit of this. All right. Good. And we're seeing overall good. We're going to look at some of the mechanics here. Duty factor is a measure of how long you're on the ground versus in the air, ground contact time, how long your foot's on the ground, cadence, vertical oscillation, just looking at some of these numbers to get a baseline, 28 centimeters in front of my body, strike from center of mass. We see just a little pelvic drop on the right side compared to the left. No real collapsing in otherwise other than that. So then let's open up and look just at the topo at the faster speed. And then we're going to compare and just see, run a little faster. So I strike fairly similar. Cadence goes up to 194. Duty factor is about the same, which is good. We really like that from a standpoint of looking at duty factor for slower and faster running. Stiffness, good values there. But I do land about 2 centimeters more in front of my body when I'm running faster there. So we'll look at some of these mechanics. I also like to just look qualitatively. Good, almost straight up and down vertical orientation of the shin. And then left, same thing, maybe a little bit further out in front of me, but not too bad here. Okay, so now let's take a look at the Nikes that we did next, and let's look at those at 7.5 miles an hour. These are both, like the Nikes are a semi-super shoe, so it'll be interesting to see how that affects the mechanics there. So overall good. The duty, one of the first things to notice, a little longer ground contact time and a little bit of a higher duty factor, which we tend to like a little lower there, and a little higher strike from center of mass. So we see that that does make me just a little bit more over strider, as we see, and landing a little bit more aggressively in a heel strike position on that side here. But again, no collapsing mechanics, looks pretty good. So let's look at this one at 9 miles an hour here. Good, so we see again between the slower and the faster speed, my cadence goes up. The duty factor is fairly similar. We do see that the strike from center of mass is now at about 34, 33. So kind of taking a longer stride there. With that, we see that that initial contact position, definitely a little different from some of the topos that we see there. Now we're starting to actually see a little bit of left pelvic drop here in these shoes. We're noticing this down here. So pretty similar difference between the two shoes, but so far between the slower speed and the faster speed. Let's look at the third one here, and the stiffness not quite as high. Let's see, so let's look at the Sauconys, and let's look at that. All right, so now bringing up these here and looking at it. So similar to the Nikes, around 30 or 32. The right on this one's getting a little further out in front of the body. As we're seeing there, and a little longer stride. Duty factor again a little higher between these. Collapsing went down, and stiffness is fairly similar to the Nikes for some of these metrics here. So let's pull up the faster one with the Saucony. All right, so now what we're seeing here is definitely, this is the highest for strike from center of mass and highest kind of heel strike position. Duty factor about the same, cadence about the same in all of those. We see again a little bit of that left pelvic drop on this one compared to the other ones there. So you know, looking at this, there's another tool that we can actually use which is really helpful if we want to compare something specifically. We can do what's called a multi-report, and we can do a gait comparison, and then we can pick out and say, let's compare the topos at 9 miles an hour, and let's look at, for our second one, let's look at the Nikes at 9 miles an hour here. And then we generate a report, and in that report we're going to be able to compare numbers directly to see what that looks like. All right, so as we go down here we can look, they're actually both at 9 miles an hour, but I forgot to change that one for the topo. So cadence slightly higher for the topo. The topo is the first and the Nike is the second here. So a little higher cadence there. Vertical oscillation essentially the same. Ground contact time lower for the topo than for the Nikes. Stride length, we're seeing, or step length, we're seeing a little bit longer in the Nikes here. So this kind of makes sense, right? The Nike has a lot more cushioning than the topos that I normally wear, and it's a little bit more of a super shoe, so it makes sense that my step length is a little bit longer. I'm kind of getting a little bit more recoil on the ground, but it also maybe makes sense that I'm doing it kind of by being on the ground for longer and getting out in front of me. There's not as much of an impact because of the cushioning when I overstride a bit more and get that foot out in front of me. And we saw that my strike from center of mass was longer, so we will see that step length. So that might not be bad if I am trying to run faster in these shoes and I'm not trying to run long distances in them. That could be, say, hey, this might actually be a decent shoe for me that I like there. We're looking, yeah, so the strike from center of mass we see went up 12% on the left and 9% on the right. So that's what we're talking about, that faster speed. and a little reduction in crossover. So we can really just go and look at each of these, and then we can even compare if we want to do another comparison. Another thing we can do is put the two captures side by side to look at and see the comparison between the two. And if we just go back just a little bit here, we can kind of look at that left, which we know is kind of going out further at initial contact. So if we look at initial contact here, what we can see is that the far side, which is the Nike side, lands a little bit further in front of the body. And if we notice, especially with the left, this is a really good one comparing. So right at initial contact, see the difference in the shin angles there? How the one closer to us, the topo, how that one is a little more vertically oriented, the foot's a little bit more neutral, where then this is the topo, the blue skeleton, and the Nike, the gray skeleton. Just a little bit more aggressive heel strike position, and the knees just a little bit straighter, whereas there's more vertically oriented shin here, comparing side to side. We just look at those two, kind of compare those, and look from all different angles as we're looking to see which shoe is the best fit for us there. I think, personally for me, based on how they felt and looking at the numbers, I think there's a little bit of an advantage of the Nikes that the strike from center of mass was maybe slightly lower. They're a lighter weight shoe. I would say that they felt a little smoother, although I do like the Saucony. I feel like if I was doing some longer tempo efforts, training for a half marathon or a marathon, I might prefer this. But it is also good for me to know, it's something that we can cue, that if you're in these shoes, you really have to focus on your mechanics a little bit more, because I wasn't thinking about it. But when you're in these shoes, you might have to work on some of those overstriding or collapsing mechanics more, because we are seeing some changes in the mechanics as we go to different shoes. So if I was picking out a shoe and trying to say, well, I might try to look at a different one, I think the Topo is a clear winner of, like, this is the one that you really have the best mechanics in, and if you're going to be doing your longer distance runs, that's a good one for you. But if you're trying to find something that we saw that increase in step length, so it might be a little bit more advantageous from a speed standpoint, the Nikes are probably the one that I would go with in this situation, because they're slightly lighter. And my typical rules for shoes are: 1, they have to be comfortable. 2, they need to be lightweight. And 3, they can't change your mechanics to unfavorable mechanics here. So I think looking at those criteria, I'm going to keep running in the Topos for my longer stuff, and they're going to be my day-to-day. But when I'm doing some speed and effort, I'm going to go to the Nikes, and I'm really going to focus on driving that knee a little bit more and focusing on just better landing mechanics, so I avoid some of that overstriding, which should hopefully reduce some of that pelvic drop that we saw as I was overstriding a little bit more in the different shoes. So I hope this helps as a great example of a way that you can actually do a really solid gait analysis and compare different shoes and help the consumer decide exactly what shoe is best for them. And we really see that there can be noticeable differences based on the mechanics of the shoes. Shoes change from year to year, so it's important you're checking these out and making sure that you're getting the perfect shoe for you.